Hey, it's Camila Stevenson, and around here we talk wealth. And what we're about to get into today is something you need to have in your brain before April 1st gets here. And no, I'm not talking about April Fools. I'm talking about a date that just got circled on the calendar of every major bank in this country because something just changed. No big announcements, though. No breaking news ticker. Y'all know how it is. Just a rule that got finalized and a date that just got set. And most people who hold digital assets have absolutely no idea what just happened. Now, maybe you do. So go ahead and drop a comment and let me know, did you know the banks just got the green light to hold crypto? Yes or no? Because I'm about to show you exactly what that means and why it matters for where your money is sitting right now. First, I do want to say nothing I say is financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. Make sure you do your own due diligence and invest according to your own convictions, okay? Everything I say is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And if you're here and you're watching, go ahead and like the video. It helps my video and it helps the channel. It doesn't cost you anything. And I just would appreciate it, all right? And then also, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you do not miss the next video. A lot of you may watch and you still haven't subscribed yet, so do me that favor. All right, I do want to go ahead and get into this. Now, if you're wondering why I got a scratch on my face, it was from martial arts, okay? I do a lot of sparring and I accidentally scratched myself, all right? So there may be times you see little scratches and bruises, and that's why, because I do martial arts. Krav Maga to be specific. All right, let me go ahead because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page before we go deeper. Now, let me explain this. The OCC, which is the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, that is a federal agency that basically oversees and regulates all national banks in the United States. Think of them as the rule book writers for how banks are allowed to operate. When the OCC says you can do something, then the banks can do it. When the OCC says you can't, the banks cannot. And it's just that simple. And what the OCC just said is this: national banks are now officially cleared to custody crypto assets on behalf of their customers. Now, let me break down what custody really means, because this word gets thrown around and people will gloss over it. When you hold crypto on an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, you do not actually own that crypto in a way that most people think. The exchange holds it. Your name is attached to it in their system, but the actual asset lives on their platform. That is why when exchanges collapse or freeze, and we've seen this happen, people cannot access what they thought was theirs. Custody means you are actually holding the asset, securing it, and being legally responsible for it. That is a completely different level of ownership and control. So what the OCC just said is that national banks, the same banks that hold your mortgage, your savings account, your business accounts, can now officially custody your digital assets the same way they custody other financial instruments. This is supposed to take effect on April 1st. Now, here's why that matters more than people realize. Banks do not move on things that they're uncertain about, ever. Okay. Banks have legal teams and compliance departments and regulatory oversight at every level. When a bank decides to offer a service, it is because the infrastructure is already built, the legal framework is already clear, and the decision has already been made at the highest levels. The announcement is just the last step. So when the OCC finalizes a rule clearing banks to custody crypto, that does not mean banks are thinking about getting in. That means that banks are already in. The rule just made it official. And I like to watch the signals underneath everything. Now, here's the thing about national banks entering any market. When they show up, the entire structure of the market changes. The liquidity changes. The legitimacy changes. The type of investor that feels comfortable participating changes. Everything moves up a level. This is not a small update. This is a structural change in how digital assets get treated in the United States financial system. And it happened so quietly that most people who hold XRP right now don't even know it occurred. So now that you understand what the OCC ruling is, I want to zoom out because this did not happen in isolation. This is one piece of a much larger picture that has been assembling quietly for a while now. And when you see all of it together, it stops looking like a coincidence. I call it a coinky dink. Okay, let me show you what I mean. Ripple, The company behind XRP went directly to the Bank for International Settlements to pitch their technology. Now, if you've never heard of the BIS, let me give you a simple way to understand it. If the OCC is the rule book writer for the American banks, then the BIS is the rule book writer for central banks around the world. It is the bank of banks, the institution that sits at the very top of the global financial infrastructure. You do not pitch technology to the BIS unless you are building something that operates at that level. This is not a startup move. That is an infrastructure move, and it gets deeper. The dollar has been losing its grip on the global reserves for years. In 2000, roughly 71% of global foreign exchange reserves were held in dollars. Today, that number sits at 59%. That is not a crash, but it is a direction. And directions matter more than moments because directions tell you where things are going before they get there. So you have the dollar slowly losing reserve dominance. You have the BIS being pitched by Ripple. You have the OCC clearing banks to custody crypto. You have the Clarity Act moving through legislation, giving digital assets a defined legal framework for the first time. You have BlackRock openly putting timelines on tokenizing their financial products. Now, let me put a pause on tokenization for a second because this word does come up constantly and it deserves a plain explanation because I know a lot of people are still learning about this. Imagine you own a building worth $1 million. Right now, to sell that building, you have to find one buyer with $1 million and go through a process that takes months, okay? Tokenization means you can divide that building into 1 million digital pieces worth $1 each and sell those pieces to 1 million different people instantly anywhere in the world. The ownership is recorded on a blockchain, so it's transparent, secure, and cannot be manipulated. Now, apply that concept beyond real estate, stocks, bonds, commodities, art, entire financial markets moving onto digital rails where transactions settle in minutes instead of days. That's what is being built right now. And every single development we just walked through, the OCC ruling, the BIS pitch, the Clarity Act, BlackRock's timing, they are all pointing in the same direction. I don't care what the prices are doing right now. Have some patience because the financial system is not debating whether to go digital. It already decided. What is happening now is the construction phase, and the assets that get embedded into that infrastructure during the construction phase are the ones that become foundational when the building is complete. So let me bring everything we just covered into your actual life because this is where it gets personal, and it has to get personal for you at some point. Most people look at XRP and they are thinking about the price, right? They watch the charts, they check the number every morning. And I understand that because we're all human and we want to see the thing we believe in move. And it can hit you when you see your portfolio down. Even if you're not going to move, even if you do have patience, it just hits you, okay? But let me explain to you that the people who look back on this moment as the most important financial decision of their life are not the ones obsessing over price right now. They are the ones who understand the structure underneath it. Here is what I mean. Think about water in a river. If that river is wide and deep, there is plenty of water flowing freely and nothing dramatic happens. But start redirecting that water into channels, irrigation systems, reservoirs, industrial pipelines, and the amount of water freely flowing in that river is going to start to shrink. The total amount of water in the world has not changed, but the available water has. That is exactly what happens when institutions begin holding an asset operationally. Right now, XRP trades freely across exchanges. Retail investors buy and sell it. Speculators move in and out. The supply feels abundant, but as banks begin custodying XRP as financial institutions hold it as operational inventory to facilitate cross-border settlements, As regulatory frameworks make it the logical choice for institutional infrastructure, portions of that supply stop circulating. They get absorbed into systems that hold it, not to trade it, but to use it. And here's the math that people are not considering. 100 billion XRP, that's how much there is, sounds like a lot, but total supply and available supply are two completely different numbers. So the market does not respond to how much exists. It responds to how much is accessible when demand shows up. When institutional demand arrives against a shrinking pool of accessible supply, the price discovery process doesn't move slowly. It moves the way all constrained markets move when demand finally overwhelms availability, quickly and dramatically. Once that happens, okay, give it some time. Okay, this is a patience game, and it always is, and it always will be, because the wealth is transferred from the impatient to the patient. We say that a lot in the wealth world, right? But really believe that, really understand that. Now, I want to be very clear about something. This is not about predicting a number. Okay, anyone who gives you a specific price target is guessing, even if it's an educated guess. What I am giving you is the structure, and the structure is pointing in one direction. The reality is, most people who understand this is not wondering whether this is happening. They're wondering whether I'm positioned good enough before the market fully prices this in, okay? Because by the time it is obvious and by the time it is up front and center, the opportunity has moved away at a greater proportion. So those who understand what's happening and get positioned early are going to benefit, just like the people who understood what the internet was before it became household infrastructure. They weren't lucky, right? They were just paying attention to the structure while everybody else was watching all the noise. And the noise will distract you. And I'm telling you, distraction can be very toxic to your financial future and your freedom. Okay. So this is your moment to pay attention to the structure. Now, let me say this, because everything that we just talked about doesn't mean anything if your assets are not structured to protect and grow what you are building. It's not just about how much you can make, it's about how much you can keep and protect, because a lot of people are going to lose their inheritance from making bad decisions and not having things structured correctly. And one of the tools that I personally use is I Trust Capital. And the reason is it matters in the context of everything that we just talked about. If you believe that digital assets are being absorbed into institutional infrastructure, and if you believe that the OCC ruling and everything building around it is real, then the question is not whether you hold XRP or hold HBAR or XLM or SHX or whatever you hold. The question is, where are you holding it? And how is it positioned to work for you and not against you? Okay. So I Trust Capital lets you hold crypto along with gold and silver, backed by physical gold and silver, by the way, inside a Roth IRA, which means as those assets appreciate, the gains grow completely tax-free, meaning you don't have to write a check to the IRS when that move happens. You get to keep everything. And let me tell you, I know that your children and your children's children are going to thank you for making these decisions for your future self and for their future self, right? And they also hold institutional grade custody so that your assets are held in a structure built specifically for security and long-term storage. So it's different from it being scattered across retail exchanges, hoping that nothing goes wrong, especially when the volatility hits. And for the business owners, they now have a treasury account for LLCs and trusts. So you can position at the company level and not just personally with that. And that is how sophisticated wealth architecture really works. All right. The link is in the description, and there is a $100 funding bonus to help you get started when you open your account. And so you can use that money to invest in assets as well, and think about how far that can go in the future, right? Now, I do want to also mention this, that there is a gap between knowing and really executing with structure and confidence. And that's exactly what we do inside of our community. Some people just need that accountability to move forward and to have someone processing if they're building the right structure. Okay. And so we work through your portfolio blueprint, your positioning strategy, your risk, how to think about custody, tax structure, staying disciplined when the markets get loud. I meet with my members every week. I'm there to support you and coach you every step of the way. I also have my one-on-ones. My calendar is open for that. The links are in the description. And also leave me a comment. Do you think you're positioned, or do you feel like you're still watching from the sidelines? Just let me know in the comments. It's really good to be transparent and allow other people to kind of feel that transparency of where you are, because we want to really just encourage one another in this community. Okay. So drop that in the comments. And if this video helped you to see the bigger picture, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, because we are just getting started, and share this video with someone who's holding XRP and does not fully understand yet what they are holding, because they may need this conversation as well. And as always, I want you to stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.